I'm Tas Mukanik, creator of Lost Time, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Tas Mukanik about the graphic novel Lost Time. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. And if you want to help the site and the podcast, please consider supporting the effort by chipping in at ko-fi.com/True North Country Comics. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. Originally from Alberta, but now residing in Montreal, Tas Mukanik is an artist best known for her YA and adult self-published works, such as The Sanity Circus and Paint the Town Red. She has a keen interest in drawing fun characters with big expressions, as well as a fascination with birds, nature, and prehistoric life. Lost Time is her debut middle-grade graphic novel from Razorbill, an imprint of Penguin Random House. Lost Time is a story of 12-year-old Evie who didn't mean to get lost, especially in the Cretaceous period. Now she's alone without her parents or anyone else to turn for help. That is, until she rescues a baby predator and raises it on her own. As a baby grows into a giraffe-sized flying reptile, which Evie names Ada, the two manage to find a way to survive in the prehistoric wilderness. Will Evie manage to overcome all the odds and find a way back to her family? Or is she truly lost in time? So, without further ado, here's my chat with Tas Mukanik about the graphic novel Lost Time. So, Tas Mukanik, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started with all the questions, I want to ask you, what was the first comic book that you read?
Honestly, the first that I can kind of remember is probably something along the lines of like Calvin and Hobbes or like Far Side, because my parents had collections of those books and I would just flip through them every so often. The first kind of like graphic novel, though, I remember really diving into were the like Amulet books.
That's good stuff for sure. Yeah. Very popular. But
yeah.
Wondering who or what inspires you to create today?
What inspires me is really a lot of like kind of like indie stuff. Like I'm a big fan of like web comics and like self-published things. So I tend to kind of circle around in those spheres. And a lot of that has also branched out now into like published works now too. Like there's a lot of really good authors in middle grade and YA that do graphic novels like N.D. Stevenson and all those. So that's kind of the circles I tend to like gravitate towards, I think.
Cool. Now we're here talking about your latest graphic novel, Lost Time, and I want to congratulate you. It's a labor of love, and reading your blog on your website, and I invite people to do so, they would understand a little bit more about what's gone into it. This is not an overnight project by any means.
Oh.
You've put a lot of time and effort into it, and I think it's paid off. But for those not familiar with the story, how would you describe it to someone?
My like elevator pitch is basically a little girl gets lost back in time with some dinosaurs, and she gets to ride a big pterosaur across the world. Basically my dream as a kid.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, you're based in Montreal now, but you lived in Alberta for a while, and you went to the Tyrrell Museum.
Yes, that
was pretty cool. For people who don't know what that museum is all about, how would you describe it to someone?
Oh, it's just one of the best dinosaur museums. Like, it's magical. I loved it a lot as a kid. We'd go there almost every year.
It would definitely spark your imagination. I think that's probably one of the inspirations for your book, would it not be?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, lots of good dinosaur stuff. And in fact, to this day, I think they're still out in the foothills. They're digging up dinosaur fossils.
Oh, yeah, they're still going. Always new stuff to discover.
That's pretty cool.
This is your first book for a YA audience, and I know that you've done other artwork in the past and other illustrations, but why did you choose this particular audience for your book?
I just felt it was right for this story. It like really taps in to like that age group for me. I'm basically kind of writing for like myself at that age. This is the book I kind of would have wanted at that age. So it's as much for me as it for everyone, I suppose.
Well, that's what they say. That pretty much
Yeah.
you should write for yourself and enjoy it, and that way you can appreciate it the most, and hopefully others will as well.
Yeah.
That's true. Now, I want to switch gears a wee bit and talk about the tools used to create your art. Or if you could walk me through your workflow as well.
All right. I used, I think, about three programs for this one, which is a lot of them the first time I've really done that for a comic. The main one I usually used was Procreate on the iPad. That has become kind of my new favorite program. It's like just really nice to be able to use the iPad anywhere. So I'd usually sketch it out on Procreate, and then I would hand it off to my lovely inker, who is my fiance. And they would also ink it in Procreate. And then I'd get it back and I would color it in Clip Studio, which is a little bit of an easier program because it handles a lot of like really big files a lot better. So I'd get all the colors in, usually just the flats in Clip Studio, actually. And then the final touches, I would go back to Procreate because it has just a bit more versatility that way. And then everything just came together in InDesign, all the lettering and whatnot.
Were you always a digital artist, or did you start off traditionally?
Always a bit more leaning towards digital, but I did do quite a bit of traditional, especially in like high school and stuff. I like both of them, but digital is a bit more versatile and a bit easier, especially for like such a big project, I find.
Looking at your blog, would you define the time as being the waiting, sitting around waiting for people to get back to you, or the creation process?
A bit of both, I
Okay.
think. There's definitely long periods of waiting and then long periods of go, 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 make the thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into the nitty gritty, but certainly you've been through, I wouldn't say the ringer, but certainly been through a lot to get this book out to people to enjoy. Would you recommend that process for someone again? I know I do talk a lot of creators and they look at Kickstarter as a means of getting their book out. Would you go back to a publisher again and do this?
Oh, I have definitely done both in the past. I've done a lot of self-publishing before this, and they're both very different kind of processes. My big recommendation, I suppose, is to go into traditional publishing. You just kind of have to be prepared for that. And by that, I mean your story has to kind of suit publishing in a sense. Like when I made Lost Time, to me, it just struck me very much as like, this is really suited for like a published book. um, it just feels that way. But when sometimes I make a story, I'm like very attached to it and really like the kind of weird vibe it has, I'll keep it to more self-published because I have a little bit more control over it. And to me, it just it's just easier that way. So honestly, my advice is if that's your dream to do publishing, it's definitely worth it. It's obviously a bit more work, but self-publishing is also its own kind of work too. So it's basically what you kind of feel for your story and what you think is best for it.
Right. Yeah. Both have pros and cons. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Ultimately, you have to be happy with the end product, and I guess you are. It's been received quite well, and I think it's going to do wonders. That's for sure. Now, you've put a lot of effort into this story and the artwork. I wanted to ask you if any other up and coming projects, and maybe a sequel. Do you think this might be a continuing story at some point?
I have actually concepted a sequel idea. I don't know if I'll do it. I'm also really attached to it just kind of being its own contained story. So time will tell, basically, on that one. I do have another book with my publisher in the works right now. It's still kind of in the early stages, but it is planned to be coming out eventually. It is another YA. It's not going to be about dinosaurs, but it is going to be possibly about monsters and family.
Ah, very good. This question comes a little bit of left field. I've been asking creators about the use of AI, and we're hearing that in all the news these days, but specifically in comic book creation. I wanted to get your take. Do you think that AI is helpful or harmful to comic book creation?
Oh man. I think in theory, it could be a helpful tool for artists to use because I think comics are obviously very laborsome and any kind of shortcuts I think are really good for artists to use. However, I think AI itself needs a lot of refining to help like give credit to the artists they're basically using from. And that's like the big issue is just it's learning from artists who didn't really consent to that. So it's not quite like as ethical, I suppose, as I'd like it to be. I think there could be a happy solution of like artists being able to license their work to AI to be used for these things, but as it stands now, I think it's a little too shady.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely more work to be done. I don't know that certain tools, Clip Studio, but I know that some of the digital programs we're using today are actually incorporating more AI functionality. And I think that refers back to what you were saying is like helping the creator maybe to do something, doing the process a little quicker, perhaps, and getting the end product out. But definitely when it comes to, generating AI images, I think there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done from a copyright perspective. So
Yeah.
time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been talking about your book, Lost Time. Wondering if there's a website that you have that people should go to find out about your current and your future projects.
My biggest suggestion is always windywallflower.com. Windy Wallflower is like sort of the online brand slash shop that both me and my fiance run, where we sell all our self-published stories. And we have like a newsletter and everything where we keep people up to date on stuff.
Great. Well, Taz, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Oh, just dinosaurs are cool. That's all I gotta say.
Thanks to Taz for the chat. You can discover more about Tas Mukanik at windywallflower.com. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And feel free to check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification button. You can follow along at True North Country Comics on most social media sites. Remember to send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. And if you want to help the site and the podcast, please consider supporting the effort by chipping in at ko-fi.com/TrueNorthCountryComics. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2023.